3 terrifying true stories from haunted motels in the Midwest. Part 1. Hey everyone, tonight we're drifting back to a place most of us have been at some point. Those roadside motels scattered across the American Midwest. You know the ones. Peeling paint, flickering neon signs that haven't been updated since 1973. Ice machines that sound like they're grinding bones, the kind of place you pull into at 2 a.m. because you can't drive another mile, and you tell yourself it's just for one night. So go ahead and get comfortable. Dim the lights, let your shoulders drop. Because tonight we're going to talk about 3 motels where guests checked in and, well, some of them wish they hadn't. These are real stories, documented accounts from the flatlands and forgotten highways of America's heartland. Nothing too shocking, nothing too loud, just unsettling enough to make you wonder about that roadside motel you stayed at last summer. Let's begin. Story 1. The Starlight Motor Lodge, Nebraska, 1989. The Starlight Motor Lodge sits, or sat depending on when you drive by, about 40 miles outside of North Platte, Nebraska. In 1989 it was already past its prime, the kind of establishment that survived on long-haul truckers and families trying to save money on their way to somewhere more interesting. 12 rooms in an L shape, a small office with a bell that hadn't worked in years, and a manager named Earl Hutchins, who'd been running the place since his father died in '81. Earl was, by most accounts, unremarkable, kept to himself, did the books, fixed what needed fixing. The Starlight wasn't making anyone rich, but it stayed open, which in that part of Nebraska was an accomplishment in itself. In late October of 1989, a woman named Patricia Vance checked into room 7. She was driving from Colorado to visit her sister in Iowa. Divorced, mid-40s, worked as a dental hygienist, the kind of person who wouldn't normally warrant much attention. She arrived around 9 p.m., paid cash for the night, and asked Earl if there was anywhere nearby to get dinner. He told her the diner 3 miles up the road closed at 8. She said that was fine. She had crackers in the car. Patricia took her small suitcase to room 7, which was at the far end of the building, closest to the empty field that stretched out into darkness. The room was exactly what you'd expect. 2 double beds with floral bedspreads that had seen better decades. A TV bolted to the dresser. A bathroom with a shower that took 2 minutes to produce hot water. She called her sister from the bedside phone to say she'd arrive tomorrow afternoon, then settled in for the night. Around 11 p.m. Patricia heard knocking, not on her door, on the wall she shared with room 6. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more knocks. She turned down the television and listened. The knocking stopped. She assumed it was another guest, maybe trying to get her attention for some reason, though she couldn't imagine why. She waited a few minutes. Silence. She turned the TV back up and tried to relax. 15 minutes later, the knocking started again. Same rhythm. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. This time it went on for about a minute before stopping. Patricia got up and pressed her ear to the wall. Nothing. No voices, no movement, no sound of a television, just the hum of her own heating unit struggling against the October cold. She called the front office. Earl answered on the 4th ring, sounding like he'd been dozing. She explained about the knocking. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Room 6 is empty, ma'am." "Are you sure? Haven't rented it in 3 days." Patricia felt something tighten in her chest. Could someone be in there without you knowing? Earl sighed. Not annoyed, just tired. "I'll come check." 5 minutes later she heard footsteps outside, then the jangle of keys. She cracked her door open and saw Earl unlocking room 6. He pushed the door open, reached inside to flip on the light and stood there for a moment looking in. Then he turned to Patricia and shrugged. "Empty. See for yourself if you want." She stepped out, hugging her cardigan around herself, and peered into room 6. It was identical to hers. 2 beds neatly made, no luggage, no sign anyone had been there. The air smelled stale and undisturbed. "Must have been the pipes," Earl offered. "Old building. Makes noise sometimes." Patricia nodded, though she didn't believe him. Pipes don't knock in sets of 3, but what else could it be? She thanked him, went back to her room, and locked the door. She tried to sleep, got under the covers, turned off the light and closed her eyes. The room settled into that particular silence of cheap motels, the distant whoosh of the highway, the occasional creak of the building, the rattle of the heating unit. Then, at 2:17 a.m., she checked the clock. The knocking started again. But this time it wasn't coming from the wall. It was coming from under the bed. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Patricia froze. She was lying on the bed closest to the window, the one she'd chosen because it felt safer somehow. The knocking was directly beneath her. Slow, deliberate, impossible. She didn't move, didn't breathe, just listened as the knocking continued. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Over and over, from the empty space under a bed in a room where she was supposed to be alone. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Patricia Vance did what many of us would probably do. She grabbed her keys, her purse, didn't bother with her suitcase, and walked very quickly to her car. She drove the remaining 200 miles to her sister's house and arrived at 5 a.m. When her sister asked why she was so early and why she looked like she'd seen a ghost, Patricia said she'd just decided to drive through the night. She never went back for her suitcase. Earl Hutchins found it the next day when he went to clean room 7. He called the number Patricia had left on her registration form, got her sister's house, and told Patricia she'd left some belongings. Patricia said he could throw them away. Earl asked if something had happened, if there was a problem with the room. Patricia said no, everything was fine, she just had to leave in a hurry. Earl didn't push it. He'd managed the Starlight long enough to know that sometimes guests left in the middle of the night and didn't want to talk about it. Here's the thing, though, and this is the part that makes the story a little harder to dismiss. In 1991, 2 years after Patricia's stay, Earl Hutchins was doing some repairs under room 7. The building had a crawl space, about 2 feet of clearance between the floor and the ground. It was mostly dirt and darkness, the kind of space you only went into when you absolutely had to. While Earl was down there, replacing a section of pipe, his flashlight caught something wedged against the foundation. He crawled over to it, thinking it was an old tool someone had left behind. It was a shoe, a child's shoe, small, rotted, probably decades old. And next to it, half buried in the dirt, was another one. Earl didn't find anything else. No bones, no clothing, nothing to explain why 2 children's shoes would be hidden in the crawl space of a roadside motel in the middle of Nebraska. He mentioned it to the local sheriff, who came out and took a look, but there wasn't enough to justify digging up the entire foundation. The shoes went into an evidence box. The case, such as it was, went nowhere. The Starlight Motor Lodge closed in 1995. Earl retired and moved to Arizona. The building still stands, empty now, windows boarded up, the neon sign long since dark. Sometimes teenagers break in to explore, though most of them don't stay long. And if you ever find yourself driving through that part of Nebraska late at night and you see the old Starlight sign leaning at an angle in the weeds, you might notice that room 7 and room 6 are at the far end of the building, separated from the others. Separated, but not isolated. Never quite isolated enough. Story 2. The Whispering Pines Motel, South Dakota, 1995. Let's drift north now, up to South Dakota, where the land flattens out even more and the sky somehow gets bigger. In 1995, there was a motel called the Whispering Pines, just outside a town called Murdo. Population maybe 600 on a good day. The motel wasn't fancy, but it was clean, and the woman who ran it, Donna Reichert, had a reputation for being friendly without being intrusive, which is really all you can ask for in a motel proprietor. The Whispering Pines had 18 rooms, a small pool that was only open in July and August, and a pop machine that occasionally gave you 2 cans for the price of 1. Truckers liked it. Families on their way to Mount Rushmore or the Badlands would stop there. It was the kind of place that existed in the comfortable space between forgettable and memorable. In September of 1995, a man checked in alone. We'll call him Robert, because that's the name he used on the registration card, though there's some question about whether it was real. He was in his early 30s, drove a blue sedan that was a few years old but well maintained, and paid for 3 nights in advance. Room 12, which was on the ground floor in the middle of the building. Donna remembered him because he was polite but oddly formal, said yes ma'am and thank you ma'am in a way that felt rehearsed. He didn't have much luggage, just a duffel bag and a briefcase. When Donna asked if he was in town on business, he smiled and said he was between things. She didn't press. Robert kept to himself for the first 2 days. Donna would see him leave in the morning, come back in the evening, spend the rest of the night in his room. He never used the phone, never asked for recommendations, never made small talk with the other guests. On the 3rd day, he didn't leave at all. His car stayed parked in front of room 12 from morning to night. That evening, around 10 p.m., the guest in room 13, the room directly next to Robert's, called the front desk. It was a man named Carl Hoffman, traveling with his wife. Carl said there was a smell coming from room 12. Not a strong smell, he said, but noticeable, like something off. Donna told him she'd look into it. She walked down to room 12 and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, called out, "Mr. Robert, everything okay in there?" Still nothing. She used her master key and opened the door. The room was empty. Bed made. No luggage. No sign that anyone had been staying there at all. The bathroom was clean. Towels folded. The smell Carl mentioned was there, faint but present. Something stale and faintly sweet, like old flowers. Donna checked the parking lot. Robert's car was gone. She went back to the office and looked at the registration card. He'd paid for 3 nights, and this was the 3rd night. He'd checked out, apparently, without saying anything. Odd, but not unheard of. People left early sometimes. But here's where it gets strange. The next morning, Donna went to clean room 12. When she opened the door, she stopped in the doorway and just stared. The room was exactly as she'd left it the night before. Bed made, bathroom clean, except for one thing. Written on the bathroom mirror, in what looked like soap or maybe lotion, were 2 words. "I'm sorry." Donna stood there for a long moment trying to make sense of it. She'd been in that bathroom the night before. The mirror had been clean, she was certain of it, and no one had been in the room since. The door had been locked. She had the only keys. She wiped the words away and finished cleaning, though her hands were shaking slightly. She told herself it must have been there before, and she just hadn't noticed in the dim light. That was possible, wasn't it? 3 days later, the Murdo police received a call from a woman in Minnesota. She was looking for her brother. His name was Robert Kern. He was 32 years old, and he'd been missing for a week. His car, a blue sedan, had been found abandoned in a rest stop outside Sioux Falls. No sign of Robert. No note, no explanation. The woman gave the police a list of places her brother might have gone, people he might have contacted. She mentioned that Robert had been struggling lately. Depression, she said. He'd lost his job 6 months ago. His marriage had fallen apart, and he'd been talking about needing to get away for a while. One of the places on the list was Murdo. Robert and his sister had vacationed there as children, back when their parents were still alive. She thought he might have gone back, looking for something. Comfort, maybe, or just somewhere familiar. The police contacted Donna. She confirmed that a man matching Robert's description had stayed at the Whispering Pines for 3 nights in September. Paid cash, kept to himself, left without checking out properly. She mentioned the words on the mirror. The officer wrote it down but didn't seem particularly concerned. People did strange things when they were in bad places emotionally. Robert Kern has never been found. His car was processed for evidence, but there was nothing unusual. No signs of foul play, no indication of where he might have gone after abandoning it. His sister held out hope for a few years, then eventually had him declared legally dead. The Whispering Pines continued operating until 2003, when Donna retired and sold the property. The new owners turned it into a storage facility, because of course they did. Room 12 no longer exists exactly. It's been subdivided into storage units where people keep their Christmas decorations and old tax returns. But here's the last detail, the one that Donna never quite understood. After Robert left, after the mirror incident, Donna went through the routine of washing the sheets and towels from room 12. When she pulled the bedspread off to launder it, she found something tucked between the mattress and box spring. A photograph. Old, creased, faded. It showed 2 children, a boy and a girl, maybe 7 and 9 years old, standing in front of a motel. Donna recognized it immediately. It was the Whispering Pines. The same building, though the photo must have been taken 25 years earlier, based on the cars in the background. The children were smiling. The boy was holding what looked like a toy truck. Behind them, barely visible in the photo, was a woman who might have been their mother. Donna kept the photograph in a drawer in the office for years, thinking maybe Robert's sister would want it. But she never got around to sending it, and eventually, when she sold the motel, she packed up the office and found the photo again, yellowed and curling at the edges. She looked at it one more time, the two children frozen in a moment of happiness at a motel in South Dakota before whatever happened to them happened. Then she threw it away. Sometimes, she said later, you just don't want to know. Story 3. The Sunset Rest Inn, Iowa, 2001. Our last story takes us to Iowa, specifically to a motel called the Sunset Rest Inn, located on Highway 20 about halfway between Dubuque and Waterloo. In 2001, the Sunset Rest was struggling. The interstate had redirected most of the traffic, leaving Highway 20 to the locals and the occasional lost traveler. The motel had 22 rooms arranged in a U-shape around a parking lot that was more cracks than pavement. The manager was a man named Dennis Kowalski. Dennis had bought the place in '98 as an investment, thinking he could fix it up and turn a profit. 3 years later, he was still fixing it up, and the profit remained theoretical, but he kept at it, because what else was he going to do? In November 2001, a couple checked in. Late 20s, married, we'll call them James and Sarah. They were driving from Chicago to visit Sarah's parents in Iowa City. It was a 5-hour drive, easy to do in a day, but they'd left late and didn't want to arrive at midnight. So they pulled off Highway 20 and found the Sunset Rest. Dennis checked them into room 15, which was on the second floor at the far end of the building. He mentioned that the heater was a little loud, but it worked fine. They said that was okay. They just needed a place to sleep. James and Sarah ordered pizza from a place Dennis recommended, ate in their room, and settled in for the night. Sarah called her parents to confirm they'd arrive tomorrow. James flipped through channels on the TV, found nothing worth watching, and turned it off. They were both tired. It had been a long week. They went to bed around 10:30. At 1:15 a.m., Sarah woke up. She didn't know why at first. Just that sudden, complete wakefulness that sometimes happens in unfamiliar places. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to James breathe beside her. Then she heard it. A child crying. Faint, muffled, like it was coming from far away or through several walls. A soft hitching sound that made Sarah's chest tighten instinctively. She sat up slowly, trying to locate the source. It seemed to be coming from above, from the ceiling. But they were on the second floor, the top floor. There was nothing above them except the roof. Sarah got out of bed and stood in the middle of the room looking up. The crying continued. Not loud, not hysterical, just sad. The sound a child makes when they've been crying for a long time and are too exhausted to cry harder. She woke James. He listened for a moment, frowning, then said it was probably from another room. Sound carried weirdly in old buildings. Sarah said they were on the top floor. James said maybe it was outside then, someone's room was playing a movie or a TV show or something. Sarah didn't think so, but she didn't know what else it could be. They stood there for a few more minutes listening. The crying faded, then stopped. Silence returned. James went back to bed. Sarah followed, but she didn't sleep well. In the morning, they packed up and checked out. Sarah mentioned the crying to Dennis. "Did you have other guests with kids last night?" Dennis shook his head. "You two were the only guests." Sarah blinked. The whole motel?" "Slow season," Dennis said, a little embarrassed. "November's always quiet." Sarah looked at James. James looked at Sarah. Neither of them said anything else. They got in their car and drove to Iowa City. And that would have been the end of it. Just one of those strange, unexplainable things that happen in old buildings, except for what Dennis found 3 days later. He was doing repairs in the attic. The Sunset Rest had a crawl space above the second floor, accessible through a hatch in the hallway ceiling. It was cramped and dusty, full of old insulation and electrical wiring that probably should have been replaced decades ago. Dennis was up there trying to trace a leak. While he was moving around, his flashlight caught something wedged in the corner where the roof met the far wall. He crawled over, knees aching on the rough boards. It was a bundle of cloth, old, rotted, disintegrating. He pulled it toward him, and the cloth fell apart in his hands, revealing what was inside. A doll. Porcelain head, fabric body. The kind of doll that might have been expensive once, maybe in the 1950s or 60s. The face was cracked, the dress filthy and falling apart, and tucked inside the doll's cloth body, like it had been hidden there, was a small notebook. Dennis opened it carefully. The pages were brittle, the ink faded. It was a child's handwriting. The entries were short, dated, covering about 2 months in the summer of 1967. Most of the entries were mundane. Daddy said we're staying here for a while. I don't like the new school. Mama is sad again. But toward the end, the entries changed. Mama didn't come back today. Daddy says Mama went away and we have to be good. I miss Mama. Daddy locked the door again. I'm scared. The last entry was just one line. I hear Mama crying, but Daddy says it's not her. That was it. The notebook ended. No name, no explanation. Just a child's fragmentary record of something that happened in 1967 at a motel in Iowa. Dennis took the notebook and the doll to the local police. They looked into it, but there wasn't much to go on. The Sunset Rest had changed hands multiple times since the 60s. Records were incomplete. They couldn't find any reports of missing children or suspicious deaths connected to the property. Eventually, the notebook went into a file somewhere. The doll was returned to Dennis. He didn't know what to do with it, so he put it in a box in the office. The motel closed in 2004. Dennis finally admitted defeat and sold the property to a developer who tore it down and built a strip mall. There's a dollar store there now, and a nail salon, and a Subway. But if you talk to Dennis, and he'll talk about it if you ask, though he doesn't bring it up on his own, he'll tell you about the couple who heard a child crying on the top floor when they were the only guests in the motel. And he'll tell you that before he sold the property, he went up into the attic one more time, just to make sure he hadn't left any tools up there. He stood in the space where he'd found the doll and the notebook, and he listened for a moment in the stillness. And faintly, so faintly he almost thought he was imagining it, he heard it. A child crying, soft and hitching and infinitely sad. He climbed down, locked the hatch, and never went back up. Let that settle for a moment. Just 3 motels, 3 stories, 3 unanswered questions drifting through the American Midwest like dust on the highway. We're just getting started. There's more to come, but for now, let your breathing slow. Let these images fade into the back of your mind. We'll continue soon.